This video is sponsored by Established Titles. Now when Season 1 is over, more and more outlets in the entertainment media complex that used to defend it will eventually come out and say what we and other independent voices have said from day one. Amazon's The Lord of the Rings of Power, is what it was always doomed to be, an unmitigated disaster. The latest to throw Amazon under the bus in a desperate bid to salvage their own legitimacy is progressive British newspaper The Guardian, and they won't be the last. What fallout could this have on future seasons of The Rings of Power? We shall see, for in this video we will begin by looking at what The Guardian are saying now, contrast that to their earlier glowingly positive review before breaking down just what changed between the two. On Monday, October 17th, The Guardian published the article, "Now it's over, let's come out and say it. The Rings of Power was a stinker." With the byline, "The world's most expensive show," which looked like an episode of Hollyoaks, only with woeful acting, was so inept that every episode left you sniggering. Setting the stage, they write, "When The Rings of Power debuted at the same time as House of the Dragon, much noise was made about which show attracted more eyeballs. According to Nielsen, it was a conclusive victory for Tolkien, with The Rings of Power viewers watching the first two episodes for 1.25 billion minutes, compared with the House of the Dragon's 741 million. But over the weeks, something strange has happened. House of the Dragon has sucked up the spotlight. It has attracted tweets, theories, memes, discussions, all on a rolling boil since the first episode. Meanwhile, if The Rings of Power has been seen anywhere, it was only in places paid for by Amazon. There are billboards and adverts and special Amazon packaging tape adorned with the show's logo. But, in terms of spontaneous, organic excitement, it has been a wilderness. Having established that, they continued to answer their own implied question, why? Well, now that the first season is finally over, there is one clear answer. The Rings of Power isn't very good. It quite often isn't anywhere near good. Now remember, this is British English, and British English published in a stuck-up, holier-than-thou, stiff upper lip yet activist newspaper with commie leanings. When they say it quite often isn't anywhere near good, what they actually mean is that it sucks to high heavens. Emphasizing that The Rings of Power sucks to high heavens, the author of the piece then says, "There are moments in almost every episode where I have found myself sniggering into my sleeve at how inept it is." Next, he tackles the predictable plot, how everyone recognized Halbrand as Sauron the first moment he appeared, and how unbelievably bad everything is, from the acting, to the directing, to the lighting and music, and even the effects, which were so highly praised early on, before concluding, "Tonally too, the drama didn't know if it was meant to be for beginner, intermediate, or expert-level Tolkien fans. As such, it felt like it was made for nobody." And then, the parting shot, aimed squarely at Amazon directly. A while ago, someone on the financial side of the television industry reminded me that Amazon isn't a television company. It's a mail-order business that dabbles in TV to boost its credibility. The Rings of Power seems to be a perfect case in point, as if Amazon dumped $1 billion into it for the headlines, then ignored a lot of the details. The frustrating thing is that there is clearly so much potential here. I just don't know if I have it in me to watch any more to see if it is ever realized. That's The Guardian throwing not just The Rings of Power, but Amazon Prime Video as a whole under the bus. That's a very different tune to what praises they were singing when The Rings of Power was first released. Let's compare what they are saying now to what they were saying then, which should perfectly illustrate that Amazon are no longer the lords of the entertainment media complex, and what repercussions will come of that. But on that note, before we move on, I'm something of a lord myself, and courtesy of Established Titles, this video's sponsor, I have the certificate to prove it. Established Titles is a project based around a historic Scottish custom where landowners are referred to as lairds, or lords and ladies in English. Through Established Titles, you can be the owner of at least 1 square foot of dedicated land on a private estate in Edelston, Scotland, which by Scottish tradition makes you a lord or lady, and you'll get an official certificate with a crest to prove it. This certificate features a unique plot number with which you can see the exact location of your land. But there's more to it. To support worldwide reforestation efforts, Established Titles work with global charities One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future, so for every order, a tree will be planted. Now, this is of course a fun novelty, and it makes for a great gift. In places where prefixes are allowed in official documents, you might even be able to replace Mr. or Miss with Lord and Lady. Established Titles is running a fall sale right now, and if you use our code MIDEDGE10, you get an additional 10% off. Also, Established Titles told me that the first 200 people purchasing a title pack using our link will effectively be next to my plot, within a few minutes of walking distance. Depending on how many of you want to become a lord or a lady, we can build our little Midnight's Edge kingdom. Go to establishedtitles.com/midedge10 to get your titles now. Link is in the description. With that, let's revisit what The Guardian had to say about the Rings of Power upon release less than 2 months ago. The Guardian may have come out and said the Rings of Power is a stinker now, and admitted that House of the Dragon squashed it in every metric that matters. But upon release, back on August 31st, the Guardian reviewer wrote that the Rings of Power was so astounding it makes House of the Dragon look amateur.
You serious?
Further expanding on this rather bold statement, The Guardian then wrote, "The Rings of Power is likely to prove divisive, not least depending on whether you watch it on a big TV or squint at its splendor on a phone or laptop." Notice that little hedge right there. You have to watch this on a big enough screen to be blown away by the visuals. Which you'll recall The Guardian today say were kind of crappy as well. But 2 months ago, they said that if you're not blown away by the visuals, then it might just be a tad divisive. I'll get back to that hedge, but moving on with their initial positive review. It is so rich and gorgeous that it is easy to spend the first episode simply gawping at the landscapes as it swoops and swooshes between the lands of elves and dwarves, humans and Harfoots. This is TV that is made for big screens, although surely destined to be watched on smaller ones. It is so cinematic and grand that it makes House of the Dragon look as if it has been cobbled together on Minecraft. Yeah, like every single other overall positive Rings of Power review, this one by and large did not stand the test of time. The only reviews that did were the flat-out negative ones, like rival British newspaper The Daily Mail, which wrote in their review, "No turkey, however bloated and stupid, could ever be big enough to convey the mesmerizing awfulness of Amazon's billion-dollar Tolkien epic." That was truth in journalism right there. But let's return to the access media, and the positive The Guardian review, but rather than the lavish praise, I'll zero in on the next hedge in it. This makes it difficult to judge The Rings of Power as an ordinary series, because so much about it is extraordinary. It is Tolkien, which means this world is already venerated and beloved by so many, whether in the form of the books, Peter Jackson's films, or both. There is an extraordinary weight of expectation before any viewer presses play. Add to that the fact that this is reportedly the most expensive TV series ever made, $465 million for 8 episodes. And it is tough to view this as just another show. It is an event, a spectacle, but if it isn't entirely perfect, does that make it a failure? From there, the review goes on to sing the praises of Galadriel, the Harfoots and the Dwarves, and after a couple of more subtle hedges, this initially positive review concluded with, "But these are quibbles, and, in the end, the spectacle wins. This is enormously enjoyable TV, a cinematic feast." While this review obviously does not stand the test of time, Amazon would have been pleased with it upon publication, as it encouraged all of The Guardian's readers to just switch off their brains and enjoy the spectacle. But however pleased Amazon may have been back then, the only bits of this review that had any kind of merit were the hedges, warning us that this was all spectacle and no real story. Over the past few years, we have seen many instances where movies and series which are celebrated by professional critics are derided by reviewers, and vice versa. This is especially true in cases where the product at hand is too big to fail and is coming from a huge corporation like Disney, or in this case, Amazon. This ever-growing divide between reviews from establishment critics and the experience of the actual viewers has resulted in the gradual erosion of trust in the establishment entertainment media institutions. It's happened little by little and over a long time. What I think happened here though is that every single critic saw right away that The Rings of Power was pretty awful, so even if their employing publication may have suggested the review be positive, some of these hedges were deliberately left in, leaving the door open to walk the reviews back at a later date. I picked up on this at the time and addressed it in our video going through the first batch of reviews. You can see that video by clicking here. But even with that, The Rings of Power turned out so much worse than expected that it doesn't just slowly erode the credibility of everyone who stupidly awarded it a positive review, it instantly shattered it. I think that's why we're seeing these retrospective reviews tearing The Rings of Power a new one, like The Guardian just published here. In order to retain any kind of credibility as reviewers in the eyes of their readers, they have no choice but to throw Amazon under the bus on this one. Because The Rings of Power was simply an unmitigated disaster. So much so that more and more of the entertainment media complex are breaking ranks and calling it an Amazon out. And that will have repercussions, even within Amazon. Which repercussions we will explore in the next video. For now, let me know your thoughts on this in the comments. And before you go, remember that Established Titles is running a big sale right now, and if you use the code MIDEDGE10, you get an additional 10% off. Go to establishedtitles.com/midedge10 now. Link is in the description.